What kind of chair did they bring today? It wobbles. It's not the way it should be. It's a terrible chair. It's always like this in life. The chair is wrong. Life is wrong. Nothing is right. Hello, my dear viewers. I'm Olga Demchuk, and today nothing will go as planned. I started with dissatisfaction about the chair, and through dissatisfaction, we often establish contact with our lives through dissatisfaction. You can be dissatisfied with a chair, you can be dissatisfied with your husband, you can be dissatisfied with your life, you can be dissatisfied with this world. Let's try to understand what happens to us when we are dissatisfied. Let's take the chair as an example. When I see that the chair is not right, I have complaints about it. Then I start to express emotions about it. I might express the emotion of anger, or I might express the emotion of suffering. Anger is when I curse and say, what is this? What kind of chair is this? And the emotion of suffering is when I say, oh God, how unlucky I am, even my chair isn't right. And these two distinct storylines, one that leads directly to anger and the other results in deep suffering, both originate from the same place, a deep sense of dissatisfaction with the world. That is, when I approach the chair, I see that it is not as I expected. The image of the chair does not match. It doesn't match the picture I have in my mind. And that difference, the difference between how things should be and how they actually are, is what gives rise to these emotions. And in this emotional state, it feels as if we are already influencing reality. Let's imagine that I am alone in a room. And all these emotions, anger and suffering, are like a monologue with myself. That is, I might curse, speaking angrily, asking what kind of chair this is. Or I might suffer, saying, oh God, even the chair isn't right for me. But you see, all of these words could have been specifically directed at someone. For example, if my husband were actually sitting right here in this room with me, I could easily make a direct complaint to him. I might say, this chair is incredibly wobbly. What kind of homeowner are you? Or I could sigh and say, oh my God, this is frustrating. But I asked you to make sure the chair wouldn't wobble. So I can lash out at him in anger, or I can express my pain, my suffering to him. And this complaint would be directed specifically at him, and I might consider that action sufficient. To put it in a different way, I openly communicated my emotions, and the outside world provided a direct response to my emotional reaction and worked to correct what I didn't like. So this intense emotional reaction of ours about something is in a way connected. It comes from a time when it was relevant. To whom should I address this complaint? Even now, people turn to the universe and say, God, why is this happening to me? Or they say, well, what kind of fate do I have? In other words, they continue this dialogue. But many people often have this very specific and directed complaint, aimed directly towards someone else. Yet, I find that I can also easily direct this entire complaint at myself as well. I, feeling dissatisfied, having a chair that I don't like, feeling discontent, get swept up in intense emotions. In other words, I overflow with emotions, but my mind is not focused on fixing what I don't like, because I am like a child who either screams or cries, and often all of this happens together. Today I have prepared a diagram for you. My mirror slipped a little here. Today I have prepared a diagram for you. When a person gets stuck in this scheme, they do not change their life, but it seems to them that by expressing strong emotions, they are influencing reality. So let's come to the point of dissatisfaction. Let's take your dissatisfaction. For example, not with a chair, but with something you are truly dissatisfied with in your life right now. Some people are unhappy with how much they earn, some are dissatisfied with their personal life, and others are dissatisfied with their sense of fulfillment. Find the dissatisfaction that you can rely on, the one that is clear to you. Now, at the center of this diagram, I will put my dissatisfaction with the chair, and you will put what you have chosen. So I have a sense of dissatisfaction. I can either fall into suffering or into anger. When a person falls into suffering, it creates the impression that they are always at a cemetery mourning something. In other words, it's a state as if you are always at a funeral, constantly mourning what you don't have. For example, I take a long, hard look at my reflection in the mirror and quietly say to myself, yes, the way I look right now is not exactly the way that I would ideally like it to be. Personally, I'm really not all that attractive. And I have complaints about myself. My nose isn't right, my eyebrows aren't right. And with this complaint, I can fall into suffering when I say, God, why do I have this appearance? And in this suffering, I might start blaming others or blaming myself. For example, I'm dissatisfied with my face. And I say, it's all my parents' fault, it's their genes from my mother. So my mother had this kind of nose, I have this kind of nose, my father had these eyebrows, and now I have these eyebrows too. I ended up with all the worst features because my mother had a better nose and my father had better eyebrows. And that's just how the genes worked out. And what, couldn't my mother have found a more handsome man to be my father? Or maybe my mother could have been more beautiful. Why was I born to these parents? So in this way, my dissatisfaction leads me to blaming others. It's about others. That is, out of this dissatisfaction, I start looking for someone to blame for it. And undoubtedly, it's much easier for us to blame others. When I blame my parents, if I am angry at them, then they become the aggressors who ruined my life, crippled my life. If I had a different appearance, I could have arranged my fate completely differently, and I wouldn't have to be making these videos for you now. I would have married successfully, and that would be it. That is, when I am angry, I cast my parents as aggressors who attacked me and ruined my life. But I can also suffer. Then my parents become tormentors. Poor and unfortunate, they ruined my life. So they are the tormentors, and I am the one who suffers. Remember, I told you a suffering person is always, as if at a funeral, mourning their unfulfilled appearance that could have been. And if I don't turn to suffering, but to anger, then I become the person who is constantly at war, fighting with others. That is, I start to curse them, or something similar. And in this anger, I am like a fighter who is constantly battling someone. In other words, our dissatisfaction, whether it turns into anger at these attacking, terrible circumstances, or people, or into suffering when they cause me pain, is essentially the same thing. I don't actually do anything, I just react emotionally, and my psyche perceives this emotional reaction as an action through which I try to influence what I don't like. So this complaint directed at another person, which comes from childhood, is considered by our psyche to be a sufficient action. In other words, I did something. I got angry or I became emotional. But when I look at myself in the mirror, feeling dissatisfied with my appearance, I can also turn on myself. That is, all these emotions can be directed at me, at myself. For example, I'm unhappy with the condition of my skin, and I start attacking myself, thinking that I could have paid more attention to it. Who knows what I'm doing? Just wasting time on nonsense instead of paying attention to my skin. So I attack myself, but I can also suffer. I can cry over how terrible my skin is. Why am I so unlucky with my skin? What kind of life is this? It's not a life, it's just constant suffering. I'm unlucky here, and I'm unlucky there, and on top of that, I'm unlucky with my skin. So I can appoint myself as the tormentor. I'm the person who can't provide myself with normal skin, and I either cry about it or get angry about it. Well, appearance is a bit simpler, but now let's move on to a more complex model, for example, family life. When I am dissatisfied with my family life, when I lack mutual understanding and support from my husband, I end up experiencing either suffering or anger in this dissatisfaction, just as before. And in this situation, I will blame either my husband or myself, thinking that I am not good enough to achieve this mutual understanding. Or I might think that my husband is not good enough to give me this mutual understanding. That is, I have not started solving the problem. I am not working on eliminating the issue. For example, at the very beginning, if you notice that a chair is wobbly, you can adjust its legs in any way, simply fold a piece of paper and place it underneath, or perhaps attach a small piece of something under the leg. I take action that directly addresses and fixes the problem, but if I get caught up in my emotions, I don't fix anything. My mind isn't even focused on correcting what I don't like. It's exactly the same in family life. When I make accusations against myself, whether aggressive or self-pitying, when I am at war with myself, telling myself, you are worthless, you can't even normalized, false. Provide yourself with a normal family life? Or I say, well, of course you're so miserable, so wretched, and everything is going wrong for you. So whether I'm suffering or angry at myself, I'm not actually starting to solve the problem. In the same way, if I express complaints verbally or mentally to my husband that he can't provide this for me, for example, if I discuss it with my friends or lie awake at night thinking about it when I have insomnia, I am still not starting to solve this problem. And when a person gets caught in this maze of dissatisfaction, as I call it, the maze of dissatisfaction, they can run around in it endlessly for a long time. And here I'm speaking to you separately about suffering and about anger. We are looking at what's happening inside us as if through a magnifying glass, through a microscope. I am showing you separately what happens when I direct this dissatisfaction at myself or at another person. But in reality, a person can do all of this at the same time, switching from one to the other in just a matter of seconds. So if I am dissatisfied because I lack mutual understanding, I might just react emotionally and consider my emotional reaction to be sufficient action, so the option doesn't even occur to me in my mind. I need to talk to my husband. Even if that thought does occur to me, I might already be so exhausted by all this, so caught up in my emotions about it, that I approach him all wound up and just unload everything onto him. Either with anger or by presenting him with my pain and suffering, making him feel like he's at fault, and as a result, our dialogue doesn't happen. So if I, upon noticing my dissatisfaction, go down this path, then when it comes to talking with my husband in particular, I will enter that conversation in an unbalanced state. I will already come into it that way, either with accumulated suffering or with pent-up anger. Now let's try to take an even more complex scenario. For example, earning money. When I think about not having enough money, the simplest thing is also to escape. Either by turning anger on myself, telling myself I'm a failure who can't earn properly, or by sinking into suffering, thinking that I'm just unlucky, that others are fortunate and I'm so poor and miserable, or by shifting the blame onto someone else, blaming the world, the country, circumstances, fate, parents, and so on. And if I spend my time searching for someone to blame, I simply won't have the energy left to think strategically about increasing my income. I am exhausted. And this tendency to fall into suffering or anger is so natural for us that without even noticing, we can stay stuck in it for hours. Caught in this maze of dissatisfaction, we fail to realize that we are not actually changing anything. We are not reflecting on anything. We are not moving toward any kind of solution to our problems. But if I realize that my income is not sufficient, then first of all, I need to stop myself. avoid falling into anger or suffering, and instead think about how I can increase it. And here we move on to the second diagram that I have prepared for you. So and if I have an idea that I should be earning, say, $5,000 more than I do now, or maybe $1,000 more. But as I am now, with this small income, I feel terrible about myself. I don't accept myself. And I only dream that my salary should become $5,000 as soon as tomorrow, or maybe tomorrow itself. My husband should give me this understanding. Or tomorrow, I should create this mutual understanding myself. Or tomorrow, I should make it so that the skin on my face looks better. But it's easier to fix a chair tomorrow. But when it comes to such strategic issues as income, appearance, or relationships, it's impossible to solve them by tomorrow. And an individual realistically cannot accomplish this by tomorrow. It's impossible for objective reasons. And because he cannot lower his expectations to just increasing his income by, say, $100, he rejects the opportunity to earn an extra $100 because he wants to be someone who earns $5,000. No, 100, I don't need this small change. Or, for example, if things worked out with my husband, to reach mutual understanding, even if it just means he approaches without anger or accusations, and a small, modest connection appears where we clarify our relationship. I'm not satisfied with that either. I don't want anything less than everything. There's even a song called All or Nothing, and so I refuse what is available to me, what is possible for me, but at the same time, I feel dissatisfied. I either retreat into that labyrinth I showed you, or I simply cancel it altogether. In other words, I completely forget about it. I erase my desire to earn more money, or I erase my desire to pay attention to my skin. For example, I could do some kind of face mask, but I want to have different skin by tomorrow, right away. So a little bit is not enough for me. In the same way, in my relationship with my husband, I could slightly improve the atmosphere at home, at least by not making complaints, not speaking with anger, not attacking myself, not attacking him, and trying to sort things out. But because only a very small result is available to me, I don't take it and I refuse it. For example, how can you increase your earnings by $100? Well, you could write a term paper for someone, for instance. I used to do that. I wrote graduation theses when I worked as an economist. For people who were studying to become accountants or economists, I wrote their graduation papers. Back then, this was probably 20 or even 25 years ago, it cost $100, which was a significant amount of money at the time. So with those $100, I can increase my earnings, but then I have to make an effort. I have to sacrifice my weekends. But if I want $5,000 tomorrow without giving up my weekends, then I either get lost in this maze of emotions, or I just say, well, it's fine, we can live like this income is enough. Or I say, well, some people have it worse with their husbands, so it's fine. Or I say, yes, it's fine, my skin is just wonderful for 50 years old. Let it stay that way. So I either dismiss my need or I get emotional about it, but I can make things even worse. I might start reshaping my worldview so that, to give you a clear example, my misunderstanding with my husband, I say that's normal, this is normal, arguing is normal. Everyone argues, I argue too, or I say, yes, it's normal to have skin like this. Because of this, a person can't grow. That is, because a person is either tense or because they set goals that are too big, they say, this is fine, or even distort things completely, saying, it's wonderful. Many people, myself included, because they can't withstand this emotional tension in the labyrinth, don't see their own shortcomings, either because they want to change them immediately or because there are so many emotions that it's easier not to notice them at all. And a person may even sincerely discuss or criticize someone else for the very same thing, but doesn't see it in themselves because they've dismissed it to avoid feeling emotions or to avoid setting an unattainable goal. In this way, a person cancels out their entire real self. That is because of this labyrinth. I hope you've drawn it. I suggest you do so, and take a photo of your own drawing so you have it on your phone. And when you encounter some kind of dissatisfaction, you can take it out and look at it and determine whether you are following its path right now in your thoughts about your problem. So instead of being satisfied with what is available, for example, as we discussed regarding income, relationships, or appearance, a person is in complete rejection of their real self. Self. That is, if I am not the way I should be, and I cannot become exactly as I should be by tomorrow, then I distort my self-image and even start to identify myself as someone else entirely. Many people identify themselves as someone completely different, at least until they look at themselves in the mirror. Or many people create a certain standard for relationships, and only when they see that someone else in another couple has a different kind of relationship do they suddenly remember that something is not right in their own lives. Or I simply do not notice my own skin at all. But then I saw some photos and realized that my skin wasn't in great condition. In other words, a person can completely reject their real self and live in an imagined persona, in an invented life. And no evolution or change is possible for them because of all these processes I described to you earlier. So, what conclusion can we draw from all this? First and foremost, it is essential to call things by their proper names. And often, people lack this honest acceptance, this ability to call things by their proper names. That is, when someone says, yes, this is the condition of my skin, yes, these are my relationships, yes, this is my income. Without getting caught up emotionally, after this acceptance, a person can then consider what is available to me right now. In this small drawing here, the real self is shown, the one I am right now, and real self 1 is the one marked at the top. And the permissible or available opportunity for me to change it, even just a little. If I agree to this small step, then from my current reality, real self 1, I can build real self 2 and 3 and so on. And these are the very steps that are often talked about in trainings, that you need to build these steps for yourself. But a person cannot step onto these steps because, as I observe in people, in my clients, and generally when talking to others, if a person is dissatisfied with something, they immediately start rationalizing, focusing on some basic issues. For example, a person enters the subway and there are no free seats, or they go into a store and there's a line and that's it. And they start running through this cycle. I should have come not during rush hour. These people are packed in here. I hate them for making me suffer or for irritating me just by being here. That is, a person becomes so accustomed to this immediate, most accessible reaction, emotional outbursts, that they don't even pause to analyze the situation. For example, analysis. Yes, I came at the wrong time, meaning it's rush hour now. I need to plan my schedule so that I come at a different time. And it's precisely this conclusion that allows you to take that small step forward. Yes, I may lack mutual understanding in my relationship, but after listening to Olga Demchuk's video, I know I can reduce either the anger or the suffering I direct at my partner, and then I'll be able to start a dialogue much more quickly. Today, I've recorded this strategic video for you about suffering and anger. I would like you to join the discussion and write. Which are you more of? Try to analyze this. Are you the one who is always mourning and suffering, as if at a cemetery? Or are you the one who is constantly fighting, filled with anger and dissatisfaction? Which of these weighs more heavily in you? Are you someone who more often blames yourself, or someone who more often blames others? And once you figure this out, share it, write about it, and then keep your eyes and ears open. At this very moment, notice when you slip into your usual behavioral patterns. And let me remind you that at the beginning of December, our School of Relationships will begin. To be honest, I'm looking forward to it myself. It often happens to me that when I find a topic interesting, I start to really dive into it, and it becomes so fascinating, so engaging. And in this School of Relationships, there will be 2 key points. This includes how to talk to your partner, how to communicate as equals, and how to avoid speaking with anger or accusations, and how you can influence and change these relationships. So please like the video and subscribe. I'm saying goodbye for now. See you next time.